and I'd like to tell you what I mean by that. But first I want to state that I strongly believe in neighborhood councils, and I should point out that I brainstormed their creation with Councilman Joel Wax and Greg Nelson. And just today I introduced a motion in council on behalf of our neighborhood councils to help them in the city clerk's election services to encourage greater voter participation in their elections. And still, while I fully support neighborhood councils, I believe their development must be organic and from the community up and not from the top down. And as to the application before you, we know that there is not much of a consensus on the ground in the Westwood community about this application. We can look around this room or read the LA Times and know that. There have been allegations and counter-allegations as to alleged improprieties and inequities, as well as questions about whether there has been sufficient transparency. In short, my perception is that the community is polarized, and I believe that a polarized community is not the best way to begin a neighborhood council. And while I recognize that certain neighborhood councils have been certified by this board despite disagreements in their communities that are encompassed by those proposed councils, I'd like to see a Westwood neighborhood council that's made up of all members of the Westwood community working together rather than one with many prominent community members working against one another. And I understand from the Dunn staff that this board on occasion has essentially called a timeout and required that the applicants work more to obtain community consensus before proceeding with an application. And I believe this board should consider that in this case and maybe even go a step further. The proponents and opponents of this application both argue that they've tried to talk with one another without success. Possibly that stalemate will continue unless the continued dialogue has an outside mediator type to help bring the two sides together. And let me give you an example from my district. There's a particular group, Pepperdine's nationally known mediation program, and they're very involved with a community disagreement on the eastern side of my district. They've done an excellent job of bringing somewhat warring sides over an issue of homeless services, which goes back more than 10 years, far longer than the disagreements that this board is dealing with now. And while I'm not suggesting that Pepperdine's specific program is the answer, I can tell you that in that situation, it's actually diffused a very thorny problem and largely resolved it. And I'd be happy to work with the board and the proponents and the opponents before you to help you identify an appropriate mediator to undertake this task. In sum, I believe that this board should give more time for consensus to develop in Westwood, and accordingly, I recommend that this board continue its consideration of this application for at least 90 days. I don't know that this will make me popular with either side, necessarily with anybody here in the audience, but I want to see that this issue is handled appropriately because I think Westwood deserves that. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to explain the public hearing process.